Hello and welcome to another Frontline members question and answer. Now today we're answering comments from our channel members on Frontline episodes and other videos about the war in Ukraine and its impact in the world stage. I'm Philip Ingram. I present Frontline, but I'm also a former senior British military intelligence officer and global commentator on all matters geopolitics, warfare, security, counterterrorism, cyber, and anything else that people decide to cross my palm with silver to talk about. Genetically, coming from Northern Ireland, I've got an opinion on everything. But putting my opinion to one side, let's get into the questions from you, because it's your questions and your opinions that are of value. First one comes from Steve. And Steve, you say, I'm with Yuri Sak. That was a good interview with Yuri and Ben. Looking at the 4-year anniversary. Never forget, never forgive. The Russian accent must now be loathed in Europe. Must be the most loathed in Europe of the last 100 years. Steve, I'm with you. I wouldn't put on the Russian accent because, to the uninitiated, you're the Northern Irishman like I am. You listen to a lot of Eastern Bloc accents, and it's very difficult to distinguish between them. If you're Ukrainian, you can tell a Russian accent from a Ukrainian accent. If you're Bulgarian, you can tell the difference between a Serbian accent, a Croatian accent, a Russian accent, and all the rest of it. But to a lot of Europeans, you can't. I'm one of the few, having lived in Germany, where I can tell the difference between a Northern German accent, a Mid-German accent, or Schwabian accent, and a Southern German accent, and from the German in Austria and Switzerland. It is interesting. But I get the sentiment that actually Russia must now be the most loathed of all the states, not just of all the countries in Europe, not just in Europe though, but I think across the elements of the Western world. There's still support for Russia, we have to recognize, in some of the wider BRICS countries, and support also in the Middle East. So Russia still garners a level of support from different countries around the world, not something that should continue to concern us. But Russia's activities for those sane-minded individuals, when we see what they're doing inside Ukraine, what they have done inside Ukraine, and we see what they're doing or not doing when it comes to peace negotiations and trying to play the rest of the West and are playing Donald Trump. Yes, Russia's activities have to be loathed. It's the only sane thing to do. Next point comes from Doc. And Doc, you say, aren't Russia's terms to Ukraine surrender? Well, yep, you're right. Surrender by salami slice. They want Ukraine to surrender the current salami slice that Russia's got. Well, actually, the current salami slice and the next, which is taking the whole of the Donetsk region, which I note last year UK Defence Intelligence would say would take the Russians at least another 4 years and 2 million casualties. The French have just come out yesterday to say at least 2 years and at least 800,000 casualties. So we're getting into the huge numbers and huge casualties and everything else. So yes, interesting times. And surrender that bit before coming back for more salami slices. Putin still wants Ukraine to be completely subsumed into a new Soviet Union with Vladimir Putin as the Tsar. And we have to recognize that. And once Ukraine's subsumed, then Putin will move on, or Putin too will move on to other parts of the former Soviet Union and other parts of Europe and other parts of the world to try and take back. And they don't care how long it takes. They're thinking in multiple generations. We're only responding in prime ministerial, presidential or election timeframes. Marty, next question from you. You say, it is still a land war. Surely holding the higher ground like villages around Zaporizhia has a huge advantage. Marty, yes, but that advantage of holding the high ground has been denuded in many ways by the fact that the high ground is now held by drones. So surveillance drones can sit 24 hours a day, monitoring from higher ground than the hills. It can use the hills for covers itself. So that good old traditional approach of having the higher ground so you could observe over a wider area has denuded in many ways as a military advantage. And that's something that is being recognized with the now depth of forward line of own troops. Instead of it being a linear line, it's now an area of 15 to 20 kilometers over drone zone. And that's the range with the fiber optic cables. Most of the drones being used in the front line now are not electronically controlled through radio signals. They're controlled through fiber optic cables, and that dictates the range that they work over. But a very valid point and an interesting discussion point, because this is going to be a sea change in doctrine, I think. Next point from Astro. Astro, you turn around and say Elon Musk is strange, but he did the right thing when it came to Starlink, whitelist. People's attitudes and ulterior motives to this move, but Musk does have an interest in continuous civilization. Astro, yeah, you're right. Musk is seeing the bigger picture. He flip-flops, not quite as much as Donald Trump, but he does seem to flip-flop in his decision making. But this is the right decision. Whether it would have led to nuclear exchange, I think that's something that people speculate a little bit too much about. We're a long way off it, and there's never been any indications of it, no matter what the Russians have said. Yes, Musk has done the right thing. Next point from Laurie. Laurie, you say, if Trump doesn't start helping Ukraine win this war, he'll lose votes, won't he? Laurie, if he doesn't continue his help with Ukraine, he'll lose votes. We have to remember that the US defense industrial base is being held up by Europe buying so many weapons from the US to send to Ukraine, that is helping to shore up the US defense industrial base. And yes, a lot of the MAGA movement do support Ukraine. So Trump's pro-Putin stance has cost him votes. So let's hope that in the run-up to the midterms, we see a sea change and a consistency in Donald Trump's support for Ukraine. And that will then help end the war much more quickly. So a good point. And finally, Lars, you say for the first time you've got a different opinion to him, Mr. Bretton Gordon. It is Iran that has written the manual for asymmetric warfare for the last 20 years and has learned the lessons from Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan and Syria. Lars, in a way, you're right. I agree with you. Iran has written it from a approach to terrorism perspective. But the manual for asymmetric warfare, that includes terrorism in that, has been written by the Russians. And Iran is trained in Russian or Soviet-style tactics and doctrine. And that is why you've got that close link between Russia and Iran, and in particular through countries like Syria and elsewhere whenever Russia had its position there. But Iran has taken the use of terrorism to a step further that Russia hasn't quite got to yet, thank goodness. But Russia has enabled Iran to do it by helping to fund and to supply weapons and other goods to many of the Iranian-backed terror organizations. So in a way, you're both right, both you and Hamish. So a difference of opinions is good because the analysis of warfare is not an exact science or an exact art. And therefore, it's that debate that enables the wider understanding. And that's why you asking questions of me and of what we see on Frontline is good as well, because it helps continue that debate. So please keep doing it. And therefore, thanks for watching this week's Q&A. I'm posting your questions. Remember, if you want access to exclusive videos and to have your questions answered, please sign up for membership. And remember, Frontline's also available on Times Radio's overnight programs if you're in the UK at about 01:35 hours GMT, or if you're in the United States, Eastern Central Time, it is at 20:35. So just in the evening, once you're settling down with a glass of something nice or a big mug of coffee before bed, you can listen to our dulcet tones giving you an understanding of what's been going on in Ukraine. So thank you very much indeed for watching and listening today. And of course, you can get us on your favorite podcast outlet. Just search for Times Radio Frontline. Thank you. Goodbye.